one responsible to put the dollars on the salary schedule and to establish a negotiating strategy with respect to it. So I hope that made sense. But I thought while we're all here, it's good to kind of talk through what each one typically would do. Madam Chair, may I open it to questions now to see if I can?
Yes, so if there are any questions, I'll give ladies and gentlemen from the Personnel Commission
Yes.
first.
You were considering the salary attached to a position. Did you consider the number of students that each district is serving?
Oh, when we selected the participating organizations, we tried to look within a certain range.
Out of whack, though.
And I think we've reported that to you in terms of what the size was. But we tried to stay away from K-12s, and we tried to stay within a certain parameter of the size. So I think some of these districts were smaller. Yeah, so that's how they were selected. Before we went about the survey, we discussed this. We worked with an advisory committee. So we got input from them and from the cabinet and from anyone else who would listen to us on the street.
Yeah, I did notice that most of the districts are smaller than we are.
What page is the list of the?
It's Exhibit D, E, I'm sorry,
D
E.
is
E1.
E1 for the districts?
The districts that were selected were E,
Yeah.
Exhibit E.
So I believe in San Mateo County, we are the third largest elementary school district.
Right.
So, and then they drop very quickly after our size. Another consideration that we utilized in selecting like districts is also ways of being funded. So none of the districts that are included in there are what used to be called basic aid, or is now being called community funded.
Right.
All of the districts on there are now state aid funded districts, used to be called revenue limit, with the exception of the high school district. The high school district is, it's a borderline district and will be state funded within a couple of years. But we used them just because we're in the same market as they. And so that's why we selected the high school district, just to know what somebody who works a block away from us is getting paid for the same duties.
The enrollment size was 2,300 to about 12,000 students.
How often do we conduct this study?
How often is it conducted?
A long time.
Well, I believe it or not, they used to do it every 2 years.
Yeah,
I'm
Jen
sorry.
was- Jen
I'm
was
sorry, I
starting
didn't
to
see
answer.
A study like this, I don't think it's been done. It's been at least 20 years, I would
15
assume.
or 20 years, yeah.
Yeah,
But I
it's
was
something of this size.
just going to say, at one time, it was every 2 years, every 3 years. excuse
Every
me.
3 years.
They would do a study.
Some
And
districts
somehow
do
it
it.
got lost in translation.
Yeah.
It went away.
Some districts do it by contract every 5 years or 3 years or 7 years. I mean, I wouldn't do this every 3 or 5 years. It just, but I think the signpost would be if there's been a good deal of change in the district,
Well,
new
that's why.
programs or reorganization. Superintendents love to reorganize districts. So I mean, so if there's a big reorganization that happens sometimes, then it might be a good time to do this again. But typically, I wouldn't do it any more frequently than 5 years. And my advice to people is usually 7 to 9, something like that.
But you were right. It's the reason they did it so often was because it was brand new and they kept, things were growing and they were adding and, yeah.
Yes.
So they had to keep doing it.
I'd like to point out a couple of things as well. I'm really pleased with, from what I see of the reports, from when my days back on the board of where we were, and to see that we only really have 7 groupings out of here that need to be addressed, and within that 7 groupings that there are rather few to deal with. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I know one of our goals way back when is to make sure that our employees were well paid and well taken care of, and we've continued to do that, and for that, is great. There are classification studies going on all over the state right now at this point in time from different things. I was state president a couple of years ago, and I still get emails from districts all over the state. What's our salary range for this, for this, for this, for this? And people are struggling all up and down the state. I mean, financially, knock on wood, we're in good shape. And we're probably in one of the best shapes of any district in the state of California. I mean, Los Angeles is struggling, and those big districts, you know, are pretty close teetering to bankruptcy in a lot of those. So we're in good shape. And you know, thank you for this. You know, from what I'm seeing, it's an excellent job, and I'm really surprised, and I'm just really pleased that you know, for us, for you, from a financial standpoint, it's going to be minimum.
Yes.
It could have been a whole lot worse, and over 20 years, Maria's right, we haven't done this in a long time, and I personally am glad we did it. The titles need to be changed to be brought up to the 21st century, which is nice to see.
And the descriptions.
And the job descriptions, and I know as we go through the job descriptions, you know, I'm just pleased to see this, so I will say thank you.
Very good, thank you. I think this is a very well-managed district, and it came out, I think, very nicely here. Yes, thank you for that.
I also might want to add, I think Ms. Hopkins referenced this earlier, but the Personnel Commission did include this in their budget, I believe, 2 years ago. And then, because funding was uncertain and we were not quite sure exactly what was going to be available, we decided not to do the study, because it's a very frustrating process to go through to not be able to make any of the adjustments if you don't have any funding. So at the beginning of this year, the Personnel Commission included it again in their budget that the board approved last year, and we determined that, you know, this might be the right time to do the study, because we may have the resources to make some of the adjustments that are necessary. And as we move into negotiation with the bargaining unit, anything related to compensation is bargainable. So we will be including these findings with negotiations, and then meeting with the board at a later time to discuss strategy around that.
Are there any further questions from the Personnel Commission? Okay, any questions from board members?
I want to read it all.
Yes, that's why we get to.
Yeah.
I think we all want to read a little bit more, but yeah.
No, there's a lot to read. I
Lot
want
of
I
stuff.
could get a better feel for it all, but,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Very good. It's been a pleasure working with all of you, especially the HR people that have helped us so much.
So I want to thank you, Mr. Ewing, and your firm, and your son, and everyone else that behind the scenes who worked on this. It was a pleasure to work with you, and probably continue working with you as we have more questions on this. And thank you for coming and being here when the Personnel Commission and the board received the report, because if you'd gotten it without the presentation, it could have been somewhat confusing for some people. I know for me, this helped me a lot than the first time I looked at it. So thank you for walking us through the report, what the different exhibits are, what their purposes are. And then as far as next steps go, Ms. Hopkins and I will be reviewing the full report and, you know, making sure that what's in there aligns with what we know of the jobs. We will also then be bringing back to each individual body your respective responsibilities in this effort. And we will also be including this report and its findings in our negotiations as well.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if item 3 under our general functions about questions and comments from board members, personnel commissioners, or administrators has to do specifically with the presentation, in which case we just did it. But there's also be an opportunity if anybody has any public comment they wish to make at this time.
I just have one
yeah.
question on this one, though. You said that there is some reclassification?
Mr. Ewing, the question is,
Can I do it?
are there some classes that are being recommended for reclassification?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of positions that would be identified for reclassification.
Is it listed here, though? I mean, is it here?
The guideline for that is what's called the allocation listing in Exhibit A. And in there, it'll share with you where the classifications are going from A to B. But it doesn't really specifically say a reclass, it might be a retitle or a reclass.
Yeah, that's, I didn't quite see it. Well,
Yes.
we'll, after we read it all, we'll
So it'll be a matter of
Yeah.
make more
interpreting.
questions.
So I know that as you read this, I can identify at least 2 positions that have very similar duties as another position in the district, and paid at very different ranges currently. One of them, I think, is it's a department head, the head of an administrative assistant in a department was titled one thing, and other people had the same duties in other departments and were paid at a different range, and so I think the recommendation is to consolidate those into one. Same thing in payroll, between classified and certificated, same functions, same duties, different pay ranges, so consolidate that, as well as in human resources and evaluations of credentials and qualifications, and we had jobs that had same duties, same functions, different pay ranges, and so at least those 3 were ones that I can remember off the top of my head, but as we review this, and when it does come back to the appropriate body for approval, we will identify those more clearly.
But we can't find it in here, though, is that it? We won't see it here?
I'm not sure it's highlighted right there for you.
It's
So
not
we
highlighted.
we will identify them and highlight them for you when they do need to be approved as such.
Because I think it's probably worse when it gets so spread out that you lose sense of it. If you do have the same types of duties, they ought to be together.
Right.
Yes.
Because otherwise, then you can't go from one job to another, sometimes without taking a test, and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And that's why it was so important to get the surveys from the employees to say, this is what I do on a daily basis, and say, well, this job and this job have different titles, but they do the same thing. And so it makes sense to make them the same class and the same job
So
responsibilities.
there will be some individual positions that are going to need to be reclassified, and that will presumably
But
change some salaries,
Yes.
for specific
And I'm not
positions.
sure if it really constitutes reclassified. Reclassified generally means you have different duties. In this case, what they're saying is they have the same duties, but got titled something else.
Consolidations.
And somehow one might have got a little higher raise than the other, but if they're doing the same thing
Right.
and they're equal, put them together and pay them for what they're doing.
Well,
So it's
sort
a
of
little different, I think.
Relabeling,
Yeah, that's a good,
Titling,
that's a
yeah.
good term. Yeah.
Consolidation of job descriptions.
right.
No, I think that's great, that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll look for them.
Yes, and so, Dr. Douglas, I think you are on the right path. This is an opportunity, since this doesn't happen but once a year at least, or as needed, an opportunity for the board and the Personnel Commission to have questions for each other, make comments, interact in a formal way. I know informally we interact all the time, but as groups and as bodies, here's our opportunity.
So if there are any comments or questions, like I say, I appreciate what you guys do for us.
I will say I appreciate hearing that we have a well-managed district, and that's a testament to the great work of Mr. Vidales and his cabinet, and also all of our employees. So thanks for that observation.
Anybody else have anybody down there?
Yeah. I just would like to say, that let's try to get together once a year, for sure, so that as things come up, we have them ready for us. I think tonight our whole focus was concentrating on these 2 big items here. And then if there is some questions that you have of us too, it's good to ask us, and we ask you, because that's how we like to work together.
So here we are. Ask away.
Well, Ron has been on the board before, so
Yes, well,
he
of
has
course.
some perspective of what the board does. I shouldn't say some, a good perspective of what the board does, but sometimes this may not be the same for everybody, and same with our board members, the new board members. If there's questions,
Yeah.
now's the time to
If you guys
ask.
have any questions about what the Personnel Commission is or what they do even, this is a good time to ask them.
Well, let me make a couple of observations here. As the state president of the Personnel Commissioners Association, you travel to different school districts around the state, and you're involved in a whole lot of things. And one of the things that I keep referencing is my own experiences with our district and how fortunate we are to have good working relationships with our superintendent, assistant superintendent, and our board, and that our district is in a positive light. And I look at so many districts where that's not the case. And the commissions are struggling because they don't have the leadership that we have. And the commissioners themselves take advantage of what training they have, but they're not exposed to a lot of the different things that we are all exposed to being in this area. And you know, what happens here in Little Daly City is you know, not representative of what happens down in LA.
Yeah, right.
You know, or then if you take it subsections of LA, you have the little districts within LA that are struggling, but they're all under LA Unified. So you see that the perspectives, but we are fortunate to have a really good district. Things are running well. I know that Dennis and Sonia see it at the conferences that we go to, but I've seen it and been part of it and been called to come to different things, say, well, what are you doing up in your neighborhood? And I tell them what we do. And so this is validation of really of where we are. And it goes back to when we, you know, many years ago, tried to make sure that our employees were well taken care of. And it's nice to see that we're still at that point.
It's nice to have inherited that legacy as opposed to a mass of seriously underpaid individuals.
Well, but this district was
Yeah.
for
well,
many years.
When I worked in the office, they had only had classified personnel for 1 year. 1 year. And when I took over, there was one letter in the file cabinet. One copy of a letter. I said, what did they do for a year? You know, but it grew and it got better, and you know, it really did real well. In fact, one of the first personnel commissioners, Jean Kennel, that was appointed to the commission, she was the one that organized the Northern California Personnel Commissioner Association.
She's NorCal.
And being the secretary, I got to help her out with that. So before that, they had no association. So they've grown. It's gone.
Let me point out one other thing to the commission. We're fortunate that both Sonia and I worked for the city and county of San Francisco.
Right.
And it's, quote, merit system, civil service, however you want to retitle, it's all the same thing. So we understand as managers with the cities what you need to do here and how this all works. And there are a lot of districts that don't understand that and don't understand what we go through. And Sonia and I will sit and say, we'll have conversations, well, you know, this classification or that class, and we go back, but we understand it, and that makes it a whole lot easier for us, for you, and for our employees.
And the other thing is the school boards and the superintendents for many years in the beginning couldn't figure out why can this commission walk in and be able to do all this stuff, and it was hard. But somewhere along the line, our district finally got it.
Yeah,
They got it. They understood that the commission has a role, a big role. So it's good looking at the history of that. But thank you guys for serving. I know you're kind of, is it 2 years, 3 years? Yeah. Okay. So you're still,
Dennis is the new kid on the block.
but a new kid on the block.
Yes.
But Sonia's been for a long time, which is great. Thank you for serving as long as you.
Been 5 years.
And then Ron came because he already knew a lot of stuff about the district, so he was an added.
I was telling them that when I joined this small group, we were all 3 women.
Yes,
Remember?
yes, I remember that.
And now I'm the lone.
Enjoy it.
What happened?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good. So I'll save my questions for the next time we all get together in case there is anything.
Sure.
But you guys are doing good, so thank you very much for your service to the district.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Thank you.
very much. We're going to adjourn the special joint meeting in memory of Willie Spain, the crossing guard from FDR School, who passed away recently. So if we could have a moment of silence before we adjourn. The joint meeting is adjourned.
Just for clarification, the school board still remains in session for additional
I was gonna say,
business.
why specific, that the
Yes.
joint meeting was adjourned, the school board will be continuing in closed session in a few minutes.
Well, thank you all for having